I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. This discussion between Michael Cohen, host of Mea Culpa here on the MeidasTouch Network, and Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin is one of the most brilliant interviews I've seen. One portion I want to share with you right now is where Jamie Raskin talks about the disqualification clause in the 14th Amendment, Section 3. He goes into the Colorado case and the ruling by the judge, which we all disagree with here on the MeidasTouch Network, where the judge said that the presidency does not constitute an officer for purposes of the oath within which the disqualification clause of the 14th Amendment attaches, even though the Colorado judge found that Donald Trump was engaged in an insurrection. So in this portion of the interview, Congressman Jamie Raskin addresses that ruling brilliantly. I mean, Raskin's a constitutional scholar, constitutional law professor. I mean, listen to what he has to say here. And then he gives this brilliant analysis, too, that I'm so thrilled to share with you on the Second Amendment, stuff that we talk about here all the time on the MeidasTouch Network. Take a listen to this. Tell me what you think in the comments below and hit subscribe.
I mean, it's an extraordinary ruling. It's extraordinary first because it is the first time that a court has joined the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, the January 6th committee, in confirming that Donald Trump incited an insurrection, or in this case, participated in an insurrection against the Constitution. For weeks and weeks and weeks, he tried to get the Constitution overturned and himself installed as president, seizing the presidency against the constitutional order. So it sounds like the plaintiffs have won their suit, right? They've come in, they've said that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment does not allow you to occupy public office at the federal level or the state level if you were already in office and you swore an oath to support the Constitution and you violate it. Well, believe it or not, I mean, it's really extraordinary. This judge in Colorado determined, although he had clearly incited an insurrection, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment applies to everybody else in government, but not to the president. Now, it doesn't say it doesn't apply to the president, and its language would indicate that it applies to everybody. But the argument is everybody else, members of the House, members of the Senate, swear an oath to support the Constitution, and he swears an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And therefore, the language of having sworn an oath to support the Constitution negates the president being included in it. Now, it's just crazy because who could be a greater danger under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the stability and continuity of government other than the president of the United States? Who is in a better position, as we saw on January the 6th, to attack the constitutional order and try to install himself as president? Obviously, the president. So you would think if he were going to be excluded, it would not be written in visible ink. It would actually be explicit in the text of the Constitution, and it's not. So I say let's stick with the original text of the Constitution. She got it right that he participated in insurrection, but she got it wrong on the legal question of who it applies to. Now, I'll say this, the silver lining here is that because, as a matter of fact, as the trial judge, she determined that he participated in insurrection, that should be, if not binding, at least presumptively accepted by higher courts as they receive it, and they can rule on that legal question of whether or not the president is covered like members of the House and the Senate and governors and everybody else.
Well, I think that we're going to see, again, Trump testing the loyalties of federal court judges or the Supreme Court. I mean, that's just what he does. His feeling is he gave them the job, they owe him. And that's what it is. You never get, it's like a gangster, right? You're on the VIG. You are on the VIG for the rest of your life to do whatever he wants. And right now, I still don't understand why anybody would cast a vote. We've made so many arguments just so far as to why nobody should be supporting him. He should be, he should be at the bottom of the barrel, not at the top of the barrel. I don't get it.
That's right. Trump's supporters say, don't have the courts decide, have the people decide. It's anti-democratic. No, what's anti-democratic is to allow somebody who tried to overturn the whole Constitution and steal the presidency to come back again, when it's very explicit in the Constitution that once you've taken the oath and violated the oath by engaging in insurrection, you can't come back again. That's the anti-democratic position. And we got hundreds of millions of people in the country. Why do we have to go back to that guy, the guy who's already proven himself to be a traitor to the Constitution?
I don't get it. But Congressman, you've said that 90% of the guns used to commit crimes in the United States can be traced to just 5% of firearm dealers. I was amazed when I saw that statistic. 90% of the guns used to commit crimes trace back to just 5% of firearm dealers. And you've created an amendment to the CJS appropriations bill that would ensure that we stop rewarding certain predatory gun dealers with federal contracts. Could you do me a favor? Can you expand on what your proposed amendment will do to stop gun violence?
Yes, the federal government keeps track of those gun dealers who are outliers, because the guns that they sell are repeatedly picked up in massacres, homicides, other forms of illegal activity. And it's a very small percentage. Actually, less than 3% of the gun dealers are on this list that they keep. And all I'm saying is that for that list, which I think the number is there have to be 25 guns that have been traced to you in serious crimes within the last 3 years. And many of them have hundreds. But if you're on that list, I'm saying you should not be able to do business with the federal government. A lot of the gun dealers are selling their guns to the FBI, to the Department of Justice, to the Department of Treasury, to the ATF. And so if we've got a list of the bad or rotten apple gun dealers, they should not be allowed to participate in that program. And more than 90% of Americans favor a universal violent criminal background check. So we have background checks everywhere. There's no gun show loophole under this proposal. There's no internet loophole in this proposal. There's no personal friend or family exception under this loophole. Everybody needs to have a background check because that works. And yet today, hundreds of thousands of guns are being sold outside of the background check because the loopholes make the law, the Brady law, like Swiss cheese. And so we've got to close that loophole. We actually have a common sense convergence around what needs to be done in order to dramatically lower the fatality rate from guns. But the GOP is just in bed with the NRA, and they oppose any efforts to make our streets safer, because they say the purpose of the Second Amendment is to allow the people to overthrow the government. And so the people have to have the same kind of arsenal the government has. That's not the meaning of the Second Amendment. And you can prove that just from the terms of the Constitution itself. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 says Congress has the power to call up the militias from the states in order to repel invasions and suppress insurrections. Right? The treason clause, the only place in the Constitution where a crime is defined, defines treason as levying arms against the Union or adhering to the enemies thereof. The Republican Guarantee Clause says that Congress shall guarantee to the people of the states a Republican form of government and assist them in putting down domestic violence. And yet they say that the whole purpose of the Second Amendment is to give the people the power to overthrow the government, like on January the 6th, which is absurd. And that's written in invisible ink, too. All the Second Amendment says is a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia. Regulated by whom? Regulated by the government, by the states and the feds. That's not the Proud Boys. It's not the Oath Keepers. It's not the Ku Klux Klan. Those are not militias under the Constitution.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.